All right, Robert, thank you. You know, when you go online, you expect to be connected with no interference, but now that connection is kind of up for debate a little bit here. Tech expert Dave Hatter is in studio to break down net neutrality. A lot of folks hear those words, Dave. So glad to have you with us, but they don't know what it means.
Yeah, it's a complex subject. I mean, the basic bottom line is the theory that you should be able to use the internet kind of the way the water system works, right? If you think about it, it's just a series of dumb pipes. There are pumps pumping water. When you turn on your tap, you're getting the same water that I'm getting.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the theory behind it. So in the old days, what most people think of as the internet was regulated under something called the Telecommunications Act of 1996, and internet service providers, the pipes people, Verizon, AT&T, were essentially called information services. With the change in 2015, they basically become a telecommunications business. Now they're regulated under something called Title II, which is actually a Depression-era law that was applied to the telecom companies back then. So the FCC now has a lot more control over what these guys can do, with the theory that they can ensure that they're not charging you more for certain types of traffic. So let's say you're a gamer and you're using more bandwidth, they could potentially charge you more for that. That's kind of the gist of the thing, but it gets very difficult to explain.
See, now there's talk about possibly what's going on right now changing. They're saying, hey, you know, the internet as we know it could be a little different maybe down the road. So what should we know about that?
So basically in 2015, the rules were changed. The FCC has attempted to do kind of where we're at now several times in the past, and the courts basically threw it out. In 2015, the rules were changed so that this Title II thing could be applied. And basically, after the election and the change in the makeup of the FCC, they basically want to put it back to the way it was before these rules were applied. So you'd go back to basically having regulation under the Telecommunications Act of 1996 or Title I versus this Title II thing. And the concern people have, and you've got two camps. The hardware people like Cisco that make the equipment that makes the underlying internet work, have generally been in favor of the Title I. The content people, the people like Facebook and Google, have generally been in favor of this Title II thing because they don't want someone like an AT&T or a Verizon trying to restrict what they're doing. So there's this kind of ongoing battle between the two.
So what does that mean for us if we are trying to figure out what happens
That's
next?
a good question, Jessica. For the most part, I don't think it really means anything at the moment, because if you think about it, the internet got to where it is with virtually no regulation. The concern, however, though, is that, again, people would be able to have the capability to restrict what you're doing, charge you more for certain types of traffic or activities, potentially block somebody's content. And, you know, that I think is a bad thing. My personal opinion is we need something in between where we were, which is what we're trying to go back to, and where we are now, because too much, technology, I think we all know, changes very quickly. And too much government regulation tends to slow that down. I think we kind of need a happy medium where Congress steps in and says, okay, you can't block someone else's traffic. You can't, do that sort of thing, and then just leaves the rest of it alone and lets these companies innovate. Because again, we got to where we are today in a very short period of time with virtually zero regulation on this stuff. But there is the possibility that companies decide, well, we don't like Google, so we're going to block their traffic on our network. That's not a good thing. So, but I would say for the time being, as a user, you're not going to see any difference whatsoever, no matter what happens. But over time, depending on how this plays out, it could definitely impact you. It might cost you more money because you may have to switch providers or pay an additional fee to get around these kind of limitations that could be imposed. So it's a bit tricky. People should pay attention, though, because it could very seriously impact you in the not too distant future.
Absolutely something to pay attention to. Dave,
Definitely.
thank you so much for coming in and giving us some insight on net neutrality and what's going on in that regard. We're going to put more details about that, by the way, on our website at fox19now.com. Let's go over to Jeff, though, as well.